Commissioners Meeting. Gina, please call the roll.
Chair Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Dixon.
Here.
Commissioner Moelis.
Here.
Commissioner Strauss. Absent. Commissioner Wilhoit. Absent.
Yes, Commissioner Strauss is traveling on business. We may get a chance to enjoy Commissioner Wilhoit's presence here at 4:30, and which reminds me to let everybody know that the 4:30 is a time certain, so if we get through the first couple of agenda items quicker, we'll have to adjourn for some period of time. Commissioner reports. I had kind of a lost December between the trade mission to Brazil, and then I managed to get the worst cold of my lifetime as soon as I hit Portland again. And it was Christmas, so I don't have much to report. How about you, Aneshka?
Well, I missed the December meeting, so I was just going to report a couple items that I was able to attend in December. One being right along with Fred Atiamo and Stephen Green to visit the Portland Lab Tissue Processing group. And so I had an opportunity to meet with the owners of this company. It's an African-American owned company, and it's been around for 25 plus years. And I'm just getting a feel for the kind of work they're doing and the kind of support that they're getting from PDC. And it's been really positive from their side. And so it was really nice for me to get outside of the construction world and looking at other industries. And I know we're going to have a report later today talking more about how we are expanding some of our efforts within working with minority companies that are outside of construction. So I'm really looking forward to that. That was a great opportunity for me. I also attended our end of the year neighborhood economic development leadership meeting in December, and there's a lot of good work being done there as well. And I'm looking forward to having some presentations from that organization here, speaking of some of the matrix and some of the priorities that they've worked on. It's quite impressive, and the entire leadership group, when they left that Friday, was very impressed with the work that's going on here. So again, positive work on behalf of the staff here, and I was just more than impressed when I attended that meeting. And last week, I got to go on the Fields Park site tour. So that was that's moved along rapidly. I either have lost track of time or I don't know what's going on, but it's almost completed. There, of course, within construction are delays always, so the finished product may take a little longer than was anticipated. Again, I'm looking forward to hearing from that general contractor because it was a minority contractor working on that park, and the feedback on how that process has worked for them as well. So Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. John?
We got out of town for a few days over the holidays as well, so I don't have a whole lot to report. Spent some time in Salem during December for the legislative days and then the one-day special session that Governor Kitzhaber called to pass the economic bill not connected to any one company that the legislature passed. So that was interesting, and then the last few days just been preparing for the upcoming legislative session. So it should be busy times, but I think there's an opportunity to do good work and get the I-5 bridge replacement funded and some other good things to put some folks back to work. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Look forward to some updates from Salem because you definitely going to spend a lot of time there over the next few months. All right, Executive Director Quinton, your report.
Good afternoon, Chair Andrews, Commissioners, and Happy New Year to everybody. It's despite the fact that we did go through the holiday season, and I think Chair Andrews passed on his illness to me right after he was done with it. The world kept moving and a lot of things kept happening, so it's a busy report. But I would like to start with, I know the Commissioners have seen this, but the City of Portland Auditor's Office released an audit in the mid part of December that took a look at the economic progress within our urban renewal areas. It's an update from a previous report. So now it's about a 15-year look at progress within our urban renewal areas, and they measured progress against areas outside of urban renewal areas and also some control neighborhoods. And what they found is significant improvements in our urban renewal areas relative to the control areas on not just assessed value, which was, I think we would expect, but also in terms of job creation and incomes. So the kind of real benefits that I think people expect from the investment of tax dollars. And given that there's a lot of discussion about the future of tax increment financing, I think it's useful to have analysis like that in the debate, so people can see the real tangible benefits that come from the kind of investments that we make. So that was very gratifying. Some other events or announcements. In mid-December, we announced requests for interest from any interested parties with regard to what are referred to as the ODOT properties. These are 3 full city block properties located on the Central East Side, just east of the Esplanade. If you've been on the Central East Side, you've noticed this massive vacant land just north of OMSI, and those are properties that have been owned by the Oregon Department of Transportation. They've held on to them for a variety of reasons, but they now see that they can part with these properties, and so we're working with them to see what kind of interest there is in the private interest to redevelop those properties, and hopefully we can make some kind of development happen there. It would be a nice next step in the development of the Central East Side. Chair Andrews and I had the opportunity, and he was just beginning to be sick, so it was quite a sacrifice on his part, but we had the opportunity to go to the grand opening of the new affordable housing project in South Waterfront called Gray's Landing. And that's a project that we started back, when the affordable housing program was still here at PDC. We started working on that. That was a difficult project to get done, but it was finally completed, and it has a focus on homeless veterans. So a number of the units are devoted to veterans, and there are support services available for veterans at that project, at that location, and as well as very easy access up the hill to the VA hospital. So it was a nice moment, and certainly congratulations go to our partner, the Portland Housing Bureau, which worked extensively on that project along with REACH, which is the not-for-profit developer. We continue to receive good news on the local economy. The Brookings Institution released another report on the state of metro economies across the country, and out of 100 metros, we were ranked as the 4th best performing economy. So this is kind of just adding to a whole long list of reports that are verifying, I think, what a lot of us are seeing in the city, in the metro area, that the economy is definitely picking up and creating a lot of opportunities. And then in terms of announcements, the last thing I want to point out is that one of our MPI districts, Park Rose, is looking for a manager to manage this program for them. They were referring to the position as a revitalization manager. So if you go to their website, the website is historicparkrose.com. You can see the job announcement, but this is a position that is funded through the dollars that we're providing as part of the MPI initiative, and it helps put the capacity in place in Park Rose to help lead the initiatives that will happen there, and similar efforts are going on around each of the MPI districts. On the company side, we had a lot of great news for our local companies, particularly within our software community and our startup community. Visify is a local company that was funded by the Portland Seed Fund. They announced at the end of December that they are partnering with Twitter to provide a kind of year-end analysis on your tweet activity, which for those of you who know Twitter, it's just another way to kind of categorize your activity, but for Visify to get that kind of high-profile partnership is a big step in their development. We had a firm called Acquia move in, a software firm, move here from Boston, and as we've downsized here, we've made available space in our building, so they're now occupying part of the 3rd floor of our space, along with the Technology Association of Oregon. So it's nice that we can provide space, but also have them close by kind of learn what's going on in the software industry. Another software company and kind of fast-growing tech company called Simplify, which is which provides opportunity for people to get banking services without having a direct banking relationship. They just were featured today in the New York Times of a featured article on what they do. So that's great attention for that company. On the athletic and outdoor side, I think we probably heard in mid-December, Keene opened up its new headquarters building. They may have talked about the last board meeting, but they're right here in the Pearl. They took over an old building, rehabbed it, and I think did one of the most kind of sensitive remodels that we've seen. I saw some report that they had fewer than 2 dumpsters worth of materials that went to the landfill when they rehabbed an entire building, and they were able to reuse a lot, and then they were able to donate a lot to the rebuilding center. So once again, just speaks to the company's values, and it's great that that's a company that calls Portland its home. On the clean tech side, a company called Lucid Energy that we've worked with, they just reached an agreement with the city of Portland to put that what they have is a turbine that goes into kind of pipe systems and uses the flow of water to generate energy. And it's a great, there's a lot of water that flows. It's not natural water, not like putting in streams and rivers, but that creates a lot of energy that goes untapped. And the water that flows through the Portland water system from Bull Run, they have to actually slow the water down because there's so much natural gravity that creates water pressure in our water system. So this puts turbines in our pipes, and then we can generate energy out of that. And it's new technology, and it's led by one of the former Pivotal Investments managing partners. So that's a great news, and it's good that the city is a first adopter in that process. And then good news for companies like Iberdrola and Vestas. As part of the fiscal cliff action that was taken by Congress, the production tax credit was finally extended. That was in doubt for a long time, and it was creating a lot of uncertainty for companies in the wind industry. The tax credit was a big part of the incentive for the investments that they were making, and they had put on hold a lot of projects while they waited for news on the tax credit. So that was great that was worked out as part of that whole drama in Washington. And then on the startup front, we continue to see growth in the programs that are helping our startups. So the Portland Seed Fund, we all know about, they just closed the application process for their 4th class. So when they select these companies, they'll be up to over 30 companies that they've helped. So that deadline was 2 days ago, and if you're paying attention, both KGW and K2 ran news stories on the Seed Fund. If you go to their website or go to our website, you can actually see the videos. They interviewed companies that had received money from the Seed Fund. They also, K2 interviewed a woman who was an entrepreneur, and she was applying to the Seed Fund, and she was telling her story. So it was great press for the Seed Fund as well as the companies that they've helped. Today's a deadline for Angel Oregon, which is the annual angel investing contest that the Oregon Entrepreneurs Network runs. So that's today's deadline. And then we also have a new entrant in the ecosystem. And I think I mentioned this last board meeting, but Nike is now sponsoring their own accelerator to foster startups related to that industry. And they partnered with a national organization called Techstars, and so there's now it's called the Nike Accelerator. The Techstars folks are helping run it. They're looking for a location in Portland, so we fully expect that they'll be somewhere probably within walking distance of here. So it'll be a great addition to Portland, and so they have an open application process that closes on February 3rd. So that, of the ones I just announced, it's probably the one that people still have an opportunity to get their applications in. So just a ton of activity on the startup side. It's really gratifying to see. And then 2 more events. Last night, John Jackley, who you'll see in a minute, and I spoke at the African American Chamber of Commerce meeting, and that was a great opportunity to talk about the work we're doing, working with African American small businesses, and to talk about our plans for helping minority entrepreneurs trying to tap into some of the high growth entrepreneurship opportunities that I just talked about. And then next week, we'll have our annual celebration of the state film and TV industry, and the governor's office, along with the state office of film and video, as well as the city office that we manage, we jointly sponsor that event and celebrate all that's going on, and we continue to have this wonderful amount of activity in the film and video industry, and you know, that activity is giving opportunities for all sorts of people to show their talents, including our own chair, who had a cameo appearance on Portlandia. If you were paying attention for about 3 seconds,
Maybe 2.
Scott Andrews and his wife Linda appeared as homeowners on the second episode of the season. So I'm sure there are reruns playing on IFC. So keep your eyes peeled for that 3-second spot. But that was probably his 15 seconds of fame, or whatever you want to, 3 seconds of fame. As I typically do, I want to catch you up on some new employees, and I was remiss last meeting. I had 2 employees to announce, and I blew through it. I think I was still jet lagged from our trade mission to Brazil. But the 2 folks that I forgot to mention last time are Amy Nagy, who's right here, is sitting in front of me. She's our business development coordinator with the Central City team, and she's focused on our green development initiatives. So working on things like our We Build Green Cities marketing campaign, to working directly with our industry partners around within the green development industry. Amy is originally an Oregon native, but she came to us from New York, where she worked in economic development in New York. She has a BA from the University of Colorado, as well as a master's in planning from the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And then Victor Caesar was a student on our Central City team, and he was here, well, maybe were you here last time waiting and I missed you? I forget. But Victor is a student. He's working on our Central East Side entrepreneurial initiatives, and Victor is a student at the PSU Master of Urban and Regional Planning program, specializing in economic development. Victor's from Houston, Texas, has his bachelor's from Texas State University, and is also, I understand, is an officer for the Texas State chapter of the Hip Hop Congress, which is a community service-based organization that strives to unite cultures through the art of hip hop. So Victor increases our cool factor by like about a factor of about 3. So thank you for joining us, Victor. And then 2 more employees to note. Sitting right here is Jeff Fish, our new HR director. The board had a chance to meet Jeff at our board retreat at the end of November. Jeff officially started on basically the 2nd or the 3rd of the month. Jeff comes to us from the Portland Public Schools. So I have to apologize to Carol Smith for stealing Jeff, but it was a great opportunity to have Jeff come join us. He has 20 years of experience in human resources and employment and labor law, and he spent 5 of those years at PPS, and then was also at the Legal Aid Services of Oregon for 16 years. Jeff has his law degree from Catholic University and his BA from the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And then lastly is Courtney Cohn, who is also a student. This is your 3rd stint with us, I think, your 3rd assignment. As a student, so she's been here for about 1.5 years. She started out in IT working on our enterprise content management work, which we refer to as ECM. And then she slowly moved her way into the neighborhood work, and so she's now working primarily on our NPI initiative as well as our Main Street programs. So thank you for hanging around. And then lastly, I'm sorry, one more staff-related announcement. I'd like to formally acknowledge Justin Douglas, who's sitting in the chair next to Eric Iverson, our General Counsel. Justin has taken the role of policy manager, which was formerly held by Lois Cortell, who left PDC after 13 years to go to Alabama. And so Justin has worked at PDC for 5 years and in a variety of roles, and so we're happy to have Justin now in this role, and he'll be working with the board on a regular basis going forward. And then the last thing is we just sent out an email and posted on our website our a video that highlights our year in review. We wanted to do something to highlight all the great work that's happened in the city of Portland, that we're proud to be part of with all of our partners in the community. So we put together a video that highlights that. It's a short video, and I think I'd like to run it now if we can. I'm Patricia, Executive Director of the Portland Development Commission. Portland is emerging from the national recession as PDC's work in 2012 played a direct role in helping businesses and residents benefit from this recovery. Our strategic focus tools are designed to improve neighborhoods, help businesses create jobs, preserve our urban assets, and make Portland a better city. I'm very proud that over the past 3 years, PDC has helped over 500 businesses, large and small, provided roughly $75 million in direct financial assistance, which in turn has attracted almost $750 million in private investment, and continue to manage innovative developments and partnerships to ensure the vibrancy of our city. As we begin the new year, we're taking the opportunity to reflect on our accomplishments from 2012.
We are finally putting investments behind our good words about truly supporting East Portland's best potential.
I'm here today on behalf of my colleagues in Portland and Spain, Iberdrola worldwide. First of all, say thank you very much for your support.
I'm thrilled today to be able to confirm that Target will build a city target location in the historic Portland Galleria building in 2013. Once again, thanks Target for making downtown Portland for your homes. Thanks.
PDC programs are making a difference in the lives of Portlanders. We look forward to partnering with you in 2013 as we work to make Portland one of the world's most desirable and equitable cities. So obviously a lot of great moments. I just want to finish by thanking everybody, both inside of PDC and all of our partners for all the great work that was highlighted there. And we're obviously looking forward to 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Great report. I really appreciate the video because I think we have a tendency not to celebrate what we accomplish very much. We have so much on our plate, we tend to move the focus to whatever the next hurdle, the next opportunity is, and we don't dance enough over the things. That was an amazing year, an amazing video. It also gave me an opportunity, I think, to comment on three things. One was, it was sort of unfortunate, I think, that this particular auditor's report did not seem to get the media attention that others have in the past. I'm sure that was because of the time of the year, not because it was good news. The second was there were a couple of other pieces of news that just came out the last couple of days that I thought were remarkable. One, they were reporting on occupancy of office and retail and industrial, which is my business. And while downtown was flat for the last year, the suburban market absorbed 2 million square feet of space over the last 2 years. The market's recovered remarkably, and it isn't whole yet, but wow. What a difference between 2009, 2010, and today. And the second was that, I think it was today it was announced that the wage growth in Washington County was the highest of any county in the United States year over year, which is, I think we probably have to thank our friends at Nike and Intel for that, but I don't care who caused it. It's just really, really great news. And we're all hoping that this will continue, this momentum will continue into this coming year. So with that, we have 2 meeting minutes to approve, November 29, 2012 and December 12, 2012. We have had 3 changes, unusual, that have been submitted. There's a typo in the November 29 minutes on page 3. It says this and it should be thus. Good catch. Also November 29, page 12, item 2 under E-Goal 5, it should read adopting an internal equity plan. And finally, we apologize on page 3 of the December 12, Philip Randolph's name was incorrectly written. It was Randall, and it should be Randolph. So we have those 3 changes. I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes of November 29 and December 12.
So moved.
Second.
Any other changes or additions? All those in favor of adoption, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I said aye. You didn't hear me. Okay, next item, public comment for items not on the agenda. I do have one person signed up, Connie Ashbrook, with a box. One year we got lumps of coal for Christmas. This looks like more fun.
More promising here. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Connie Ashbrook. I'm Director of Oregon Tradeswomen Incorporated, and we have a number of programs that promote the success of women in the trades through education, leadership, and mentorship. And I want to thank the Portland Development Commission for your support of our 2012 Women in Trades Career Fair. We had almost 2,000 women and girls attending, and it's a very important workforce career education that feeds the pipeline for folks to build PDC projects. And I will give a little bit of testimony a little further in the agenda for under the equity agenda item, where I will quantify that a little bit more. But I wanted to make this very brief today, but also thank the commissioners for all your support for our work, and the PDC staff that's been really instrumental in helping us connect to PDC and make a difference. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for the T-shirts. Good-looking T-shirts. We'll make sure that the right size gets to the right people. And thanks for
one's not
keeping
right
the
for me.
gift under $15 in value, so we don't have to report it.
I do have a plaque as well, also under $15 in value, and
Well, it can go to PDC. It doesn't need to go anybody.
Patrick,
It's all right.
if you wouldn't mind, I would like to present this to you. So thank you very much, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll have to feature this in next year's video.
Good start to the 2013 year.
Chair
Okay.
Andrews, could I make one brief comment?
Sure.
And I guess just to, not only to maybe highlight Connie's good work, but just for anybody that might be watching this on TV that's a girl or woman that's thinking about a career in a non-traditional industry. One of our union joint apprenticeship and training committees was open for applications a month or so ago. And I talked to one of the people that did the interviews after the applications were in, and they said that they noted a marked difference in the readiness and the preparedness of the women that applied that had been through programs at Oregon Tradeswomen as opposed to ones that had not. So that kind of effective prepping will help these people succeed once they get in. And that's the end game. It's not just applying, it's not just getting in, it's graduating, it's journeying out. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, on to the regular agenda. This is an action item, Resolution 6988, adopting the equity policy of the Portland Development Commission. John Jackley, Jeff Fish, Patricia Weekley.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to present a new and comprehensive equity policy for your consideration today. With me is PDC HR Director Jeff Fish and Patricia Weekley, our Contracts Compliance Coordinator and also Chair of the PDC Equity Council. The new policy does a number of things, but in terms of its fundamental changes, it replaces the existing business and workforce equity policy, with which you all are familiar, with a comprehensive agency-wide policy that expands scope to include internal business practices and all PDC resources and programs. We're building on a solid base of results on the construction side. In the last 5 years, PDC's averaged more than 30% MWESB utilization, more than 20% workforce diversity, and more than 20% apprenticeship utilization. We've produced more than $100 million in contracting and payroll for minority firms and workers, including more than 1 million payroll hours for minority workers. Now, the results shown here focus on minority firms and workers because that's where the biggest utilization gaps are in the construction industry. Now, in terms of the new policy, here are some of the details about the differences between the current policy and the proposed ones. It expands equity coverage beyond construction. It includes the traded sector, cluster firms, loans and grants, and non-financial investments. It expands our coverage to internal business policies, and it also delegates authority to the executive director to implement specific procedures. In terms of community benefits, the policy formalizes the role of the equity lens for PDC resources, requires community benefit agreements for all significant projects, and supports inclusionary community engagement where multilingual and multicultural considerations will be offered consistently. Now, we've been doing a lot of this already on a project-by-project, program-by-program basis, but we'll be able to do a much better job when it's required across the board, not just for PDC, but for our partners and for the recipients of our resources as well. This new policy has been built on a series of public and stakeholder engagements, and as a result, its connections are deeper than one single public participation process. If you recall, the North-Northeast Initiative that Commissioner Wilhoit headed expanded resources in the interstate URA, but also brought hundreds of new people into the process. And these new people provided great insight and recommendations. We kept track of them, and we've incorporated them into the policy and the accompanying procedures. We also participated in the creation of the Portland Plan and the new City Office of Equity, and we've incorporated those results into the process and the new policy as well. And while the Oregon Sustainability Center is not moving forward in its current form, the new approaches that we identified for professional services are reflected here as well. And then finally, our very vibrant and robust and participatory Neighborhood Economic Development Leadership Group has reviewed and recommended both the equity lens and our new equity-based commercial corridor analysis, which is prioritizing our business development activities in Portland's neighborhoods. As I mentioned, the new policy is both comprehensive in its scope and high-level in its content. It will be accompanied by a set of administrative procedures that establish direction for internal business practices, which Director Fish will address. It implements the stakeholder recommendations following the disparity study, which Patricia Weekley will discuss, and it fills in the implementation specifics for each areas in the policy, including inclusionary, multicultural approaches. And importantly, the procedures retain PDC's aggressive approach to workforce diversity, apprenticeship, and contracting goals and requirements. So at this point, Director Fish will discuss the new policy and the implications for internal business practices.
Thanks, Director Jackley. Well, after 5 days on the job, I can say that I'm really glad to be here at PDC and very much looking forward to continuing my work in HR, especially in the area regarding this equity policy. The equity policy, as Director Jackley pointed out, requires that internal equity practices be defined in PDC, and the draft equity procedures that the commissioners see actually requires an HR equity plan. That HR equity plan will have us seek out best practices for diversity and inclusion for internal business practices, and I'm glad to see Patricia Weekley has already started doing that by speaking with city and county officials, and will also have us develop internal equity diversity programs and diversity and equity programs that will include training. Along with the Business and Social Equity Division, HR plans to develop training, and while we don't have the specifics on that, we know that it needs to engage staff, that it needs to be meaningful on a personal level for staff, and that it will positively affect relationships internally and with external business partners. This training should focus on cultural competency, self-awareness in race, culture, and other diversity issues, as well as how institutional racism may affect decisions in PDC. The equity plan is required to focus on recruitment, retention, and also career advancement for all employees at PDC, but also employees of color. And in regards to recruitment, we will continue our targeted recruitment both locally and nationwide to recruit a diverse staff that reflects the local community. We also will aspire to exceed the affirmative action plan benchmarks that would reflect the local community. As far as retention goes, I believe that the training initiatives will be a major part of that, but we will also make sure that cultural competency is included in staff evaluations as well. When it comes to career advancement and opportunities for promotion in PDC, individual development plans will be developed for each employee and will be applied with an equity lens so that we make sure that career advancement and mentoring opportunities are available to all staff and staff of color as well. All of these practices in the equity plan, the HR equity plan, will be for a goal to be a more diverse staff at all levels of the organization. And I really look forward to working with Patricia Weekley in particular on all these efforts.
Great. Thank you very much. Now Patricia Weekley will discuss details of the changes on the construction side and implementing the recommendations stemming from our stakeholder group on the disparity study.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about our business equity updates. However, prior to that, I'd like to just speak to the Equity Council and piggyback on Director Fish's comments about Human Resources Equity Plan. Even though we will be moving forward a more diverse employment body, we feel it's very important to address cultural competencies as they exist now with our very competent staff. So Director Fish and I have agreed to publish before Patrick, our Executive Director, an a very aggressive plan, excuse me, to accomplish that, which will include a reorganization and a refurbishing of our existing equity council. So we're excited about that prospect, and we look forward to presenting that to you. Thank you. Now, proceeding on to the PDC equity policy and our changes for specifically our business equity, we've expanded how we define equity as far as entrepreneurship to include disadvantaged business enterprise. We believe by acknowledging DBE firms or disadvantaged business enterprises, we will actually increase our competitive pool of entrepreneurs, and we will invite DBE firms to participate with PDC as business partners. And as we do that, we'll be able to assess their capability based on their DBE certification and designation. Next, we will move forward to include in representing our DBE equity goals, we will include professional service firms. Also, we decided that we have to be more proactive about implementing our prompt payment policy as it relates to our equity business partners. And we are going to be very rigid about how we're going to move forward with self-performing work. In other words, we are going to assess each contract that we administer, and we will decide whether or not our construction business partner will perform self-performing work, and whether or not that's feasible as it relates to small business opportunities. Moving along, we're going to consider alternatives to low bid. We would like to be creative and strategic as we move forward and making sure that our business opportunities aren't limited to competitiveness, but to creative inclusion. In regard to specific projects, we feel that we will decide whether or not our business partner could benefit as far as their equity efforts to include a DBE or MBE and WBE coordinator to assist them. We also feel that we need to reevaluate our insurance and bonding barriers to make sure that we remove them and that we focus on capacity building initiatives, which brings me to 2 pilot projects that we've currently implemented. One project is to stimulate professional service firms to accomplish inclusion of those firms as far as our equity goals. We are working with the OAMI, I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, but the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs. And we are working with them on a collaborative media that will provide a network, an electronic network for professional service providers to access, to update profiles, to take advantage of social media in creating networks and business contacts, and to lastly take advantage of business development resources through that electronic platform. So we're going to test that theory with 3 professional service providers who meet our equity requirements, and we look forward to those results. And we also are partnering with the Metropolitan Contractors Improvement Program and the National Association of Minority Contractors Oregon to work with them on what we're calling a peer advising model. And that's a proven model that I've had the privilege to participate in previously. And we create a structure that peers can assist a challenged entrepreneur with a particular business concern. We're currently negotiating with our partners, NAMEC and MCIP, in regard to what those particular criteria will be, and we look forward to sharing the results in regard to that pilot as well. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Patricia. I wanted to end on this following graphic to show you that the ultimate impact of this policy is the integration of our equity goals with the operational on-the-ground implementation of our work. This map shows how it's integrated with the neighborhood work, but it's also being integrated by the Central City Division, by the Business and Industry Division as well. And what this policy will accomplish, and it's kind of the holy grail of equity work, which is to ensure that diversity and equity and inclusion are not something that's off to the side in an organization. I think one of the great things that Patrick and the leadership here have done is to imbue it, to make it part of the operational work, to make it attached, literally, in the case of the equity lens, to our financial products and our decisions. So it's not something that's in a consultative fashion. All of the senior managers are responsible for equity outcomes. It's not just Patricia or Jeff or myself or anybody else. And it shows how in all of our divisions, the equity work is going to be married and just be hand in glove with the operational side. And we think that way we're going to be able to set the bar even higher. We're going to get better results, and I think we'll be connected to the community more, and we'll get both the kind of performance results and the inclusion results that we're hoping for. So this concludes our formal presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Terrific presentation and a great job. We do have several members of the public signed up, and so before we grill you with questions, I know that the commissioners will have a few. Why don't you give up your chairs? We'll call the public up, and then we'll call you back.
Thank you.
So we will start with Jody Parker, Gail Castillo, and Jeff Moreland.
And Chair Andrews, if I can again butt into your
You certainly may.
gavel. I'll just take a minute to introduce Jody as she's coming up to the mic. She comes out of the Laborers Union and has been at the Columbia Pacific Council for just about a year now after I left that council and moved on to the State Council. And she's doing a good job, and I'm really enjoying working with her. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'm sure they were big shoes to fill.
Yes, you can see, most days I feel that I fall short, so, but again, Chair, Commissioners, thank you. My name is Jody Parker. I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer, and I appear to be reading off paper. I don't like that, but I'm just going to try and track. We represent 27 different affiliates in 9 counties in Oregon and 3 counties over in Southwest Washington. Our council represents, or we're a voice for building trades. We work for wages, fair working conditions, education, and apprenticeship opportunities. We rise in support of Resolution 6988. The benefit for craft workers lies within the use of BOLI-approved apprenticeship training programs that have been in existence for 5 years or longer, and has a proven track record of producing graduates. That requirement brings a stability and a continuity to our workforce rather than, and this is my little interjection, rather than picking somebody up, using them for a little while, and then just dispersing them. We train and we have qualified, we have hours and educational commitments through our training programs, and I think that this is just a great opportunity. When we utilize our training programs, we also raise the level of our area workforce. We traditionally, speaking for myself, will stay within our craft for a period of years, becoming responsible members of our communities by purchasing groceries, paying our utilities, buying clothing, securing stable housing, raising our families, paying taxes, getting health care, securing our pensions, and hopefully one day retiring. There's a lot of other benefits to this resolution, and far more qualified people are going to be speaking to that. I just want to thank you for your time again today and encourage your adoption of Resolution 6988. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's my turn to read. Good afternoon. My name is Gail Castillo. I'm the president of the Hispanic Chamber. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. We're here to speak on behalf of and in support of the proposed equity policy. We feel that this equity policy broadens the equity lens of PDC into every aspect of its activities. In order for our city to prosper in the future, we must be inclusive both within PDC and with PDC's partners. PDC's partners must also help create opportunities for all members of our community. Traditionally, as you know, this has not been the case. PDC is helping pave the way and we think this policy supports PDC's efforts. Specifically, we think this policy is the next logical step for PDC, since operationally, PDC has already begun to strengthen its relationships with community organizations such as ours, with the intent of increasing business opportunities. I just started.
Yeah.
Opportunities for diverse communities, especially in the neighborhoods that have not received much attention or resources in the past. As you know, the Hispanic Chamber does have a contract with PDC, and as a contractor under the PDC's Small Business Development Program, we have been working with a variety of businesses throughout Portland, from small ethnic neighborhood convenience stores that are creating healthy food options for nearby residents to distributors of green building products that are adding to Portland's reputation as a leader in green technology. In all cases, we are helping to strengthen their business, to expand their services, and to impact jobs. We do this through, as you know, one-on-one technical assistance, access to both traditional and non-traditional financing, developing of marketing and operational plans, identification of other services such as PSU's incubator program, and WSU's mentoring and coaching program. We also make every effort to coordinate our efforts and our activities with your other staff throughout PDC, which I think hopefully you find helpful. Generally speaking, the average citizen does not understand, nor do they trust government, and that includes PDC. So I think we are helping support you, and we're helping provide a bridge between PDC and the local small businesses. I want to also point out that there are other opportunities. As you know, the Chamber does not only this, but we do other things, leadership development. I want to say that there are other opportunities for us to continue to partner and to work together, such as we have formed the Latino Construction Contractors Committee, and one of the reasons we formed that is to increase the relationship building between the contractors, the prime contractors, and organizations such as PDC, bring them to the table, have them discuss what their capabilities and experiences are, but also how to access some of those opportunities in a professional manner. So we continue to look forward to working with PDC, and once again, we do support this policy and hope that you will vote in favor of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Moreland. I own Raymore Construction. We are a certified DBE, MBE, ESP contractor located out of Northeast Portland. We work on a lot of the projects with TriMet and Hoffman and several of these projects. And I just want to lend our support and just how pleased we are at this proposed policy, this equity policy. This is probably the most comprehensive policy that I've ever seen that I think addresses several of the barriers that has limited minority contractors to be able to sustain growth and to be able to have adequate workforce and to be able to have access to bonding and eliminate some of the things that's been traditional barriers, the low bid process. And I just think that the flexibility even given at the level that they can make decisions on the fly was going to be tremendous for them to be able to adjust the policy as necessary to hold to the spirit of what this policy represents. So I just want to lend my support, and I thought it was important enough for me to make an appearance to just come down and let you know that I am strongly in support of this, and my organization is strongly in support of this equity policy for PDC. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank all three of you for taking the time to mid-afternoon in a wet, rainy Portland day to come down and visit with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we have two more in person and one that we will get a chance to see in video. Connie Ashbrook, Maurice Roaming, and then we have a little video from James Posey. Hello again.
Hello again.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director. My name is Connie Ashbrook, and I'm the Executive Director of Oregon Tradeswomen Incorporated. And we educate women and girls about careers in the building construction trades. We had 76 women graduate from our pre-apprenticeship program last year. 64 of them got jobs in the trades with our support. And we had 119 young women graduate from our girls' construction camps. I'm here in support of the revised and expanded equity policy. This policy brings economic development for low-income Portlanders, like the low-income women we serve. They come to us having done low-waged work or unemployed, and through our training and the help of our apprenticeship partners, like the ones that John Mullis referred to, and the Portland Development Commission, they become taxpayers, and then in full circle, they are able to contribute to the economic vitality of the city. This policy works to build economic vitality and to make sure that all of Portland's residents are able to participate in the economic development initiatives of the Portland Development Commission. I especially want to praise the committee approach to the Equity Committee. Studies have shown that that sort of committee does vastly help institutions develop effective effective equity policies. And then I also wanted to briefly let you know that the Economic Opportunity Initiative, the next item on our agenda, significantly contributed to our ability to make sure that the low-income City of Portland residents that we serve are ready and able to work on Portland Development Commission projects. So that also has contributed to this economic vitality, coming full circle to be taxpayers and contribute to the city. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chair Andrews and Commissioners. I'm Maurice Roming on behalf of NAMAC Oregon. We represent over 70 small minority contractors, and we're happy to support this equity policy. One of the things that we were excited about seeing in this policy is the inclusion of DBEs. And as you look through the equity lens, we hope that you'd bring a more focus in on that DBE, which are historically underutilized firms. And so when we're looking at equity, we know that the DBE contractors, and when organizations like this focus in on the DBE inclusion, similar to like TriMet, the VA, and several, they have an outstanding results of utilization and growth on those firms. Some of the most successful firms are DBE firms. And so we're happy that you have included that, and we just wanted to lend our support to this mission.
Thank you. Thank you both again for your time this afternoon. I did have one more sign up, Andres Montgomery. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to provide input on my experience as a minority entrepreneur in the Portland area and working through my relationship with PDC. Let me introduce myself. I'm Andres Montgomery, CEO of Dream Digital, a Portland-based education technology startup that is resident at the Portland State University Business Accelerator. We're one of about 20 companies currently a part of the PSU Business Accelerator program. Our focus is on making it easy for teachers and students to use tablets in the classroom. Our team launched some of the first iPad pilot programs with 6 schools in the Salem and Portland area back in 2010, about 6 months after the iPad was launched. We started the company in the public library in Salem in August of 2011, and while we searched for office space and began writing our business plan. Previous to launching Dream Digital, I ran a mid-sized e-commerce business in Salem and had relationships with schools and organizations in the education industry, so it was a logical place to start the business. Besides, the members of my team were all originally from the Salem area. As we became more engaged with the education community and looked at growing our company and hiring more people and building partnerships, it became evident that we needed to move to Portland. Last summer, we began looking at office space and opportunities to expand our operations into the Portland area. Previous to that, most of my work experience over the past 20 years had been at Microsoft as a Microsoft employee or as a consultant living in the Seattle area. I knew few contacts in the Portland area from working in Seattle. I had done some work with a local ad agency, but that was about it. And neither did the folks on my staff. So we didn't have much of a relationship in the Portland area. I did, however, have a connection with a colleague at Nike that had worked with me as part of the the Northwest Minority Supplier Development Council. I reached out to her and she gave me a list of people to contact and made introductions. One of these introductions was to Mike Green with the America 21 Project, a nonprofit social enterprise dedicating to promoting inclusive competitiveness and connecting economically disconnected people in the innovation economy and ecosystem. He in turn introduced me to Stephen Green at PDC and Skip Newberry at TAO, or the Technology Association of Oregon, Dwayne Johnson at Ideal Portland, and James Winter at PSU, amongst others. I mention these guys because they all had a direct impact on our eventually relocating to the Portland area and being part of the PSU Accelerator program, as well as my joining the board of TechStart, a nonprofit arm of TAO focused on STEM education in Oregon. Each of these individuals directly engaged with me to connect me into the community and resources that were available. Dwayne introduced me to the PSU Accelerator and coached me through the application and presentation process before the Tennessee board. Skip Newberry introduced me and recruited me to the TechStart board with a view towards promoting STEM education in underserved communities. Stephen connected me to Skip and multiple resources, and James Winters is working with us on our engagement with PSU Business School capstone projects, where we're working with students in his class to build our social media strategy for a peer-to-peer e-commerce site we're launching this spring. Our move to Portland has gone very well, and we have already hired our first employee from the area, a young lady that graduated from PSU last spring. We intend to hire more people from the area and engage with more companies as we grow our business. It was made possible by individual efforts and getting us connected to the people and resources that we more likely than not would not have found on our own. Not because we aren't smart or resourceful, but because of the limited time that we have as we focus on running the day-to-day operations of the company. I'm not sure if my experience is the norm for a minority entrepreneur in Portland or not. I suspect that it's the exception rather than the rule. My experience with diversity-related issues has taught me that inclusion has to be intentional and with measurable goals or it will not happen. And the PDC equity policy is one that I support, as it supports the effort through a more formal process than what I experienced.
Thank you. And we have a little video.
Good morning, my name is James Posey. I'm the co-founder of NAMCO, the National Association of Minority Contractors. And I made this video because I'm not able to attend the January 9th meeting of the PDC Commissioners related to the subject of their new equity program and policy. I'd like to say that I can speak on behalf of a large majority of minority contractors in saying that we are very pleased that PDC has taken these efforts seriously, and that they've actually been out backwards in trying to develop a policy that really address some of the historical barriers that have caused minority contractors not to succeed in the Portland market. So we're very pleased with this policy. It's a very, very good start. And let me just say that this particular policy future, and let's continue to build upon this progress as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Going around ruining other people's stuff they have to pay for.
Okay. John, Jeff, Patricia, you want to come back? I want to thank everybody again for taking the time to come down and visit with us this afternoon. It's really helpful to the commission to get input from citizens on items like this. I don't have much in the way of questions. Personally, I was very impressed when I saw this, and I've got to agree with Mr. Moreland and Mr. Posey. We've not only raised the bar, but I think we've set a whole new set of standards, and it's very comprehensive. And this commission in particular, I know, has been very proud of the work that we've done in terms of raising the bar in the construction industry. And I think that success bodes well in terms of the influence that we've had on others in this community to raise their bar, that we can do that again. But we can't do it without very strong and well laid out plans. So I'm looking forward to the implementation of this. And I will pass it on to Commissioner Dixon.
Very good presentation. Everyone, thank you for speaking also down here this afternoon. I understand a lot of the reasons why it was really important to add the category of the DBE, but could you further explain what our policy was prior? Did we not look at DBE firms before, and where did the consideration for adding that to this policy come?
Sure. In the past on PDC projects, we would only have a DBE goal if it had federal funds.
Okay.
So when we would do a joint project with PBOT that might have had Metro or state funding that came from the feds, there would be such as the Foster Woodstock project that you all approved earlier this year. That had a DBE goal because it had federal funding and it used the ODOT program. But prior to that, we hadn't. One of the recommendations that came from our stakeholder advisory group on the disparity study was that PDC should allow us on non-federal projects to use DBE goals either in conjunction with MWESB or just standalone DBE goals as a way of expanding the utilization, particularly to close those gaps with women and minority firms. So this will allow us in the future to have the flexibility to look at a project, look at the potential capacity and the potential lineup, and either do MWESB DBE or just DBE or a combination that makes sense, all towards keeping an eye at closing the gaps that were identified.
So our goal, our utilization, our goals, let's say that they're still, I'm just looking at contracting only because we're familiar with that, are at 20%. Now we're including the DBE category to be a part of that calculation?
It would depend on the project. One thing that I think this new approach gives us is the flexibility to look at a project, to look at not just the disparity study, but the kind of input and feedback that we get, whether it's from NAMAC or from individual contractors or from whoever, and to be able to assess goals that are really both project specific and project compatible. We may well see a project, and of course, that part of that project approval is ultimately your approval of the goals as well as the overall project. So of course you would have the final say on that, but there will undoubtedly be projects in the future where we would just want to set a DBE goal. And as a result, that pool, although it's available to any kind of contractor, is much more inclusive of women and minority contractors than, say, ESBs, which the disparity study showed were heavily overrepresented on many projects.
Okay, great. This is a question for Jeff. What is the percentage of employees of color currently at PDC?
I don't know the current percentage exactly.
Okay.
I did ask staff to take a look at the local area minority population, and at this point, I believe that we are at or above the representative levels from an affirmative action plan point of view.
Okay, great.
I think the last number we saw, we were at 15%.
Okay,
So
so that
it's
represents.
I think it's a number that by some definition would be considered acceptable, but when we put the plan together, it's our hope to have a much higher target than that, so.
I was really happy to also hear from Andre from Dream Digital. Thank you for your presentation. We've heard a lot of great information from your company and others, and I think it's really important that we do expand beyond the contracting world. I already mentioned that earlier, but you know, there are business opportunities everywhere within the city, and just to be limited to contracting is very limited. So I'm really pleased to see that it's a broader expansion to our equity policy, and that's what I'm most excited about with this. So keep up the good work. The last question was in terms of the delegation to the executive director. What if, is that going to carry on through someone beyond Patrick? I mean, that we know who has this at the center of, you know, his plan, but what if the next director?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not by persons, by position, so
Right.
the delegation would be in effect as long as the policy is in effect. The board, of course, can always revisit the policy and make changes to the policy if it's not achieving the results you want, if you're not comfortable with the direction that staff is taking. And so we can certainly keep you in the loop on any actions that are taken under that delegated authority. But yes, it applies to anybody who's executive director.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Commissioner Moles.
Thank you. And I really don't have any questions either. I want to thank all the folks that came in this afternoon and provided testimony and shared their thoughts. It's great to have different people's perspectives. I want to thank you, John, and Patricia and Jeff and everybody else on the staff that did all the hard work pulling this together. And I would just agree with Chair Andrews and Commissioner Dixon, and you know, it's time that we expand past the world of construction. I think we've got a good start there. We can always improve, but I think to have a much broader policy and encompassing policy makes a lot of sense. So good work, and I know we'll have you back in the future to let us know how it's unfolding.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything more, Patrick?
No, I mean, I think the priority for this certainly comes from the board, but I share it personally and made it a goal of mine when I took this job 2 years ago. I had hoped that we would be sitting in front of you a long time ago, and I think part of what's taken so long is I think we've actually been exploring this topic in great detail and what it means for really the non-contracting part of our business. So that's always been the ambition, is how do we take the great success we've had and the real dedication that we have as part of the contracting work and make it an explicit policy throughout the whole organization. And we've learned a lot during these 2 years, and the Neighborhood Economic Development Strategy, I think, has been one of the primary tools that we've explored this topic, because it was a value of that strategy. We really explored what it meant to be thinking about how do we address, you know, the issues that are affecting communities of color in our neighborhood work, and I think that really helped us then understand the comprehensive nature that of this policy. So like I said, it's long overdue, but I'm very happy with where we're at now, and I obviously want to thank John and Patricia and even Jeff, who jumped right into this, but a lot of the credit also goes to Kimberly Branham, who's been overseeing not just this work, but also the Neighborhood Economic Development Strategy work, and helped pull all this together as well. It is a widely shared value in the organization. Our delay in pulling this together is not because it's not something that people in the organization have cared about. It's because we were trying to get it right, and everybody has been committed to making that happen. So I'm very proud of where we are today, and I really look forward to now putting into place. I think we have a lot that we can get done. So
great, thank you. Great presentation. So I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6988, adopting the equity policy of the Portland Development Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, the work.
Yeah, the work, the hard part.
Okay, on to the next item, 7 in the book. It's an action item, adopting program guidelines for the Economic Opportunity Initiative Adult Workforce Development Program. It's Resolution 6989. Kate Deane.
Hi, Chair Andrews, members of the commission, I'm Kate Deane. I'm a manager for the neighborhood team, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the Economic Opportunity Initiative's Adult Workforce Development Program. You're being asked today to adopt guidelines for the program. These guidelines will be used by us as we prepare a new request for proposals to select a new roster of nonprofit providers that will actually deliver workforce development services for us. It has been 7 years since an RFP to select providers was last issued, so it's long overdue that we be here. I want to acknowledge, before I get started, in the audience, Lynn Knox, who has been the program manager for the Economic Opportunity Initiative, is here with us today, and she has done tremendous work since 2004 on the initiative, and just want to give her a lot of credit for the program development work that she has done to get us to this point. So today's presentation will really be in 3 pieces. First, I'm going to provide you a little bit of background about the Economic Opportunity Initiative, specifically the Adult Workforce Program. We'll talk a little bit about the kinds of changes that we're looking at for the future, and we'll talk very briefly about the timeline for the request for proposal. So the EOI, Adult Workforce Program, aims to raise the incomes of very low-income individuals through workforce development. The program was initiated in 2004 by the former Bureau of Housing and Community Development, and it was transferred to PDC in 2009. All of the individuals that are served under the Adult EOI Workforce Program are at 50% of the median family income and below. The workforce development services are provided by experienced nonprofit organizations who have the capacity and experience to work with individuals to get them to do career planning, to do life skills support, to provide support services and training, and then to do job placement, retention, and advancement. So PDC is not conducting the work directly, but rather we contract with our providers to do this work. Individuals are enrolled. This is for a long term. It's up to 3 years of support and services. It's not a light touch program. It's really a very heavy and in-depth touch program. The funding for the program is approximately $1.2 million for this fiscal year, and that really comes from 2 sources. One is a community development block grant, and the other is our general funds. We are expecting about a 10% cut in funding in the next fiscal year and are planning for that. The program focus, you can see up here the populations that we have historically worked with in this program. Nearly half of the participants in the program have been formerly homeless or formerly incarcerated. A little over a third have been immigrants or citizens with limited English proficiency, and approximately 15% have been women and people of color who are interested in the trades. Of the $1.2 million in program funding, we have approximately 4% of our funding that goes to other support services such as credit repair and financial education and record cleanup, which is really helpful for participants as they are trying to clean up records, understand how to get their credit in proper position to really gain entry into a job all on its own, and then to gain advancement.
Just one quick question. The Community Development Block Grant comes from the Housing Bureau?
That comes, yes, directly from what's now called the Portland Housing Bureau. It's a federal fund.
It's a federal fund.
It's a
Okay.
federal fund, and we have an annual agreement that disperses that money to us and guides our expenditure of those funds for the Economic Opportunity Initiative program.
The decrease that we're looking to see this year, is it due to the federal or the state or the city or both?
It's both. We're planning both at the direction of the Portland Housing Bureau, we're planning for a 10% cut in our community development plan, block grant funds, and so that's their read of what the distribution will be to Portland next year, that it's going to be approximately 10% lower. That could be more significant depending on what Congress does, or less significant, but 10% is our planning number. And then direction to bureaus around general fund is to do a 10% cut. So we are looking, because this is a large program, we are looking at a rather, it's a difficult cut for us to be taking.
Thank you.
And it really, that trickles straight down to program delivery. Let's see. Just in terms of outcomes, as I mentioned, this program has been in existence since 2004. There have been 5 cohorts who are enrolled for 3 years each, so 5 graduating classes. We have enrolled a little over 1,200 people. Of those enrollees, 41% have been people of color, and 17% have been non-native English speakers. We set a success goal that we would have a minimum of 635 individuals graduate after 3 years with that minimum 25% increase in income. The providers actually achieved success with 685 individuals. So that's 107% of the goal we set for ourselves. So we know that not everyone who is enrolled will actually go through the 3-year program, stick with it, get that income increase, and go on to do any advancement. Looking at the program overall, what that means is that for every person, we have about a 54% of all enrollees who do actually complete the program 3 years with that 25% increase in income. And if you look at the populations that are served, just reflect back on, we have individuals who are really have faced and are facing some significant barriers in their life. Formerly homeless, the formerly incarcerated, people who have immigrated to this country, and people who are trying to enter the trades, which is a very tough industry to navigate and to be successful in. Moving forward, so I mentioned that it's been about 7 years since we did a new request for proposal, and we are needing to do a new one now. We began working with our partner, Work Systems Incorporated, which is for the City of Portland, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County is really the region, that service area. They are the workforce development entity. They have a lot of dollars that come to them through the Department of Labor and are responsible for workforce development for all sorts of individuals who are unemployed here in the Portland area. So we began discussions with them, and they have a focus program that also focuses on individuals who are high need, who will need more than just a light touch when they go into a workforce center in order to be able to get a job and be successful in that job. So what we have been talking to them about is really taking the dollars that we have for adult workforce development, which are largely, but not exclusively, around vocational case management, career planning, job placement and retention, and pairing those up and leveraging those with Work Systems Incorporated resources around training, basic education, and employment. And so you'll see on the next slide a little bit more about what those services are. But we think that if we are to have a system-level alignment of our dollars and their dollars and a lot more robust coordination between the two entities, that we can have better outcomes for the populations that we're serving, more access to training and other resources, and that, I mentioned that we do have a declining funding environment now. we think that our best chance for keeping even and getting new resources to continue to provide this services to this population is by collaborating, that we can make a better pitch to funders, both federal and nonprofit, if we are really taking a collaborative approach. So this slide just simply shows you a little bit about what that integration is likely to look like. We have vocational case management services that is represented by the blue. That is the work that is really done through the Economic Opportunity Initiative dollars, and it stabilizes individuals, supports them, places them, helps them with getting job advancements, and keeping them on the job. We would then pair that with resources over at WSI, which are represented in the green, that include preparation for job. A lot of individuals are needing just really basic education, some job readiness, bridge training, where people can just get some career exposure to fields that they may be interested in, and then resources for actual vocational and occupational training, internships, and on-the-job training dollars. I think there's a misconception that WSI does a lot of job placement. They're pretty much job placement light, so the job placement end of things would still be done through the vocational case management. But that said, we are talking about, and they already have, some very specialized job developers for hard-to-place individuals, such as the formerly incarcerated. That kind of job development is fairly specialized, and it's something that we think we could create potentially more of that system-level specialized job development for specific populations. So in the future, just a little bit about what will be the same and what will potentially change. The program will continue to serve very low-income individuals, who have high needs and are facing life barriers. It will continue to provide that long-term, up to 3 years of vocational case management for the participants. The thing that is new is really our collaboration with WSI and really leveraging their unique resources. We right now are not taking the advantage that we could for our participants in the occupational research and planning. They have employer panels and sector partnerships that they can bring to the table, and other sort of research and just resource development capabilities that we think we should be collaborating with them on. So in terms of the next steps, I mentioned that we need to do a new request for proposal. We are right now doing outreach with our interested parties to let folks know that we are going to be doing a new request for proposal. We're doing that in concert with WSI. We intend to issue an RFP in February, have proposals due in March or early April, and announce grants in May, and have contracts begin in July. And the way this RFP comes out, it may directly come out from PDC, or we may collaborate more intimately with WSI on the RFP. That is a decision that will be made later in the month. But regardless of which direction we wind up going, the guidelines that you are considering adopting today will guide the development of the RFP and guide the administration of the program. So that concludes my remarks for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. Good report. A couple quick questions. We have been operating under the policies and practices that were in place at the time, so we've just been following the same that the PHB used when they transferred this program to us. So
right.
This is our first shot at, now we've got experience and we're setting up our own guidelines. Is there any in particular that are very much different than before, as from the highlight standpoint?
There really isn't. The program came to us in really good shape. It is, really based in sound research and about what's effective in working with high-need populations. And so we don't plan to change the population focus. We don't plan to change the long-term nature of the support. We and WSI agree that that is what individuals who are trying to rise above their circumstances need in order to succeed in the workplace.
Thank you. That's all I had. Commissioner Mullis this time. I'll put you on the spot first.
I don't really have any specific questions. It's a good report. Just a couple things I'd like to highlight is I think the alignment with WSI makes a lot of sense. If we can get there, it just makes sense to, I think, get your best bang for the buck that way. It's the most effective use of the dollars, and if it makes it easier for the client to understand one system, then that's a lot easier as well. And I don't know if you said this in your report or I just missed it, but we track the providers' track records, correct? I mean,
Right.
There's numerous providers that WSI contracts with, and then we in turn look back on those and watch their success records, and we'll evaluate those in the future.
Right.
Correct? And I
Currently,
think that's important.
Right. We, both WSI and PDC have a strong interest in making sure that if we're giving someone a contract to do work for us, that they are delivering. And so we have quarterly reporting that they do to us, and whether this program is directly administered by PDC or we're working collaboratively with WSI, that report back function is very, very important.
Thank you. Thanks.
Very good report. Thank you, Kate. I know you spend a lot of your time also, just as we were discussing in the briefing, that this isn't something where even if we do this collaborative approach with WSI, that PDC is just saying, okay, now you guys are in charge of it. Can you, again, just explain how much we are still involved? And I think this is a really smart approach. It's thinking ahead and preparing for what the future may look like, because this is not a program that we want to see go away. I think it's very important for our community. But that process, as well as how competitive the RFP process is, and for applicants that may be looking to apply, what strategies that they maybe should think about in terms of, because I think we only have 8 spots, and I know when we did the same program with the youth that it was highly competitive.
Right. So exactly, if we are to do what I would call a co-investment, no matter what, we are going to collaborate with WSI. We are going to collaborate with them a lot more. But if we wind up taking the dollars that the city has for workforce development and investing them with WSI, we will, as contract managers, it's not just we have a contract, we check in, a light touch every once in a while, and move on our merry way. Right now, we do have a similar contract with them for youth workforce development that we just established last spring. I am meeting with the program manager and all of the contractors on a monthly basis to hear about the work that they're doing and the kind of collaboration that is occurring between WSI and the providers to develop and tweak the program. So I have monthly meetings with them. I'm on the Youth Workforce Development Council, and then I have numerous one-on-one meetings and phone calls regularly with the program manager. And so if we are to do a similar investment on the adult side, it will be the same level of effort and attention will continue to be paid. We would be considered a co-funder of the system, not just this isn't a simple contract. The city has certain interests to make sure that the target populations we are desiring to serve are being served and are being served well. So we will continue to have an intimate relationship with Work Systems Incorporated. To answer your second question, the request for proposals is likely to be very competitive. You mentioned that we may have, I would say we will have approximately 8 providers that are selected through the RFP. I would encourage people who are interested in applying for the RFP they're certainly welcome to contact me and to look on our website for details about the RFP. But I think one thing that many may not understand is how complex this work is, and that we will encourage partnerships between agencies who maybe don't have as much experience doing workforce development at this point, but who are interested in developing that capacity. But if they know a certain population very well, it may be a really good fit for that agency to hook up with an entity that has more depth of experience in doing workforce development. So we do encourage people to do partnerships, and but we have to acknowledge that we are procuring for workforce development services, and we need to have a certain level of experience and capacity demonstrated by the prime agency to carry that work out.
Great, thank you, Kate, for
Thank
all
you.
your hard work.
Sure.
Very good. Great program. Patrick, anything you want to add? Okay. I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6989, adopting program guidelines for the Economic Opportunity Initiative Adult Workforce Development Program.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we are hereby adjourned as the PDC Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much. Good first meeting of the year, and we are going to convene as the Portland Development Commission Audit Committee. And since we're an hour and 40 minutes into it, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break. We'll be back at the 1:45. friendly visitors to introduce.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Chair Andrews, Commissioners, Director Quinton. My name is Faye Brown, and I'm the CFO of PDC. And with me is Catherine Kaminski, PDC's Accounting Manager. We're here to present to you PDC's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, for fiscal year 2012. We received an unqualified opinion on the CAFR from our auditors, Moss Adams. We've submitted the CAFR to the State of Oregon in compliance with state law and also with the Government Finance Officers Association for an application of our 25th Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We ask that you accept this report, and we're also providing you with PDC management's responses to Moss Adams' letter to the Audit Committee dated November 21st, 2012, and request that you also accept these responses from management. We felt that the audit went smoothly and would like to thank Moss Adams for their services, as well as the City Auditor's Office and PDC's accounting staff, Amy Aragon, Steve Barron, Sam Bragato, Yana Easement, Marge Villamarin, and Michelle Whaley. I'll now turn it over to the staff of the City Auditor's Office and Moss Adams to discuss the audit process, the audit opinion, and the audit report.
Thank you.
We may do two. We'll speak.
Good afternoon, Chair Andrews and Commission. I'm Drummond, Kahn, the Director of Audit Services in the City Auditor's Office. Pleasure to see you on Portlandia. I was pleased to see that.
Thank you.
Using TiVo, we were able to freeze it and make sure it was really you for this. I think that's the stuff that, fame is made from, so it was excellent. But a pleasure to be back with you. The City Auditor's Office manages the contract with the independent audit firm of Moss Adams, which conducts the financial audit of both the city and PDC as what accountants call a component unit of the city. I want to echo Faye's thanks to the PDC accounting staff as well as to the firm of Moss Adams for their great work. Moss Adams, partner Jim Lanzarotta, and Nancy Young from Moss Adams will go over the detailed results. I also wanted to thank Fiona Earle, a principal management auditor in our city auditor's office, who manages the contract. As I mentioned last year, that provides a very good double layer of independence. So not only does the PDC board have an independent audit from the firm, a licensed municipal audit firm, but you also have that layer of independence that the contract is managed by the city auditor's office, which provides that added layer of independence. So in our opinion, the process works very well. This is a good process for us and for PDC, so we're delighted to help with that. And any additions?
Just a note that this is now a new contract with Moss Adams. Last year, the city went out with a request for proposals and took in bids, and Moss Adams won competitive bidding. There were 2 members from PDC on the evaluation committee. So Moss Adams had previously audited PDC for 5 years under the old contract. This is the first of a 3-year contract term with, again, the option for the city to extend it.
And we're also pleased to have the PDC as an audit committee with its audit advisory committee, Commissioner Molis and Commissioner Wilhoit, and we meet with them regularly, and thanks again for serving on that, Commissioner Molis and Wilhoit. We also provide internal audit services to PDC, also at an independent level, have completed 3 audits in calendar year 2012, and have 1 working now dealing with PDC's records management program that was requested by PDC's management. So both performance/internal reviews as well as managing the contract for the external audit. So again, happy to work with you. And we'll introduce now from the firm of Moss Adams, Jim Lanzarotta and Nancy Young.
Well, good afternoon or good evening. Afternoon still, I think.
Again.
I'm Jim Lanzarotta, partner with Moss Adams, and ultimately responsible for our audit of Portland Development Commission. But of course, I can't do that without a team. And so we had a team of folks that were here working on the audit, and Nancy really kind of led the charge. So she supervised our crew in the field and was the direct link in communication with your staff. And so Nancy and I are here to go over the results of that audit. What we'd like to do is just very briefly remind you of the scope of services that you engaged us to perform under this contract that the city manages. And of course, we issue a number of opinions and reports, and so we want to talk about what's in those. So we'll talk about the findings of the audit relative to that. There are some required communications, which we've done with your audit committee in the past, but we want to just hit on some highlights of that. So Nancy's going to help me with that. And we'll finish it up. I know that we don't want to spend time with you on accounting standards particularly, but there are a couple that are coming down the pike that are worthy of mention to you. So you're fortunate that you've got an accounting staff or that finance staff that really know how to put these financial statements together. They're very knowledgeable on these things, so they're on top of this and will continue to stay on top of it. But as a commission or a board, I think there's a couple worthy of your understanding, at least at some level. So we'll talk about that. So that's our agenda. So let's launch in. So just briefly, the nature of the services, you know, when I think of audits of a government, sometimes it's nice to break it down into elements. And so there's about 6 elements that I would tell you that are involved in our audit service to the commission. I think you have a pretty good understanding of the audit of financial statements. So that independent kicking of the tires, looking at source documents, determining if the numbers and disclosures in these statements are right. You know, communication with your bank and your legal counsel and others in different procedures that help us determine if this document is accurate. You have a good understanding of that. But in addition to that, we have a requirement to test your internal controls. So what are those checks and balances and safeguards that management uses to determine that they can put this document together accurately? And then we have an obligation to report to you the findings of that. And so tonight we will do that. We'll tell you some areas that we had identified during the audit. Now also in our audit approach particularly, and what's required by the standards at some level, is a review of your IT system, so information technology. So you know this couldn't all happen if you didn't have some pretty good computer hardware and software. And anytime that's used in the processing of financial transactions, we've got to understand it. Well, we also came in and did a pretty hefty review of the general and application controls that are used centered around those IT systems. And there was a deliverable that came from that. A fourth element is, since you're an Oregon municipal corporation, there are some state laws that you're required to follow, well, quite a few actually. And as an auditor for an Oregon municipal, there are specific laws we're required to test your compliance. And then we have a report on our findings on that. A fifth element is, given that you receive federal grants, and actually most of them are received by the city and they contract with you to administer, there's also some testing of federal grants. Most of that was done at the city level through the city audit, but of course we had to work with your staff since you administer some of those grant programs, and there's some reporting related to that. And then finally, you know, you do, as I mentioned, you're fortunate that you have staff that can put this document together. I forget, I think there's some 1,500 different government entities in the state of Oregon, and very few are able to put this together with their own staff. They rely on the audit firms or CPA firms to put this document together. So in our contribution is just that technical review of it, and it's nice to focus on just our audit work and not the preparation of the document we would also then be required to audit. So it's nice for us to be in that situation. So that's the nature of the services very briefly. So let's talk about our reports. And I think Faye already mentioned to you the biggest one, which is the overall opinion on the financial statements. And in technical jargon, we came to an unqualified opinion. So that means we didn't have to qualify it for any known problems with those statements. Layman's terms, we call it a clean opinion. So basically, we came to ability to say positively that this statement meets the requirements of governmental accounting standards and has the required disclosures and so forth within it. So excellent, a tribute to your crew. And then we did have some findings relative to this, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Nancy and talk a little bit about, so I mentioned before, we have to look at your internal controls as an example, or a part of the service. And there were some internal control related findings. So.
Great, thank you, Jim. So we did have 5 areas this year that we need to report to you, and we are reporting them to you as a significant deficiency. To define that a little bit, findings can come in different levels. You know, the most egregious would be a material weakness. That means that the controls in place are not sufficient enough to prevent or detect timely errors that go, you know, undetected and eventually reported in the financial statements, and that can be material errors. Okay, so they're not material weaknesses. There are significant deficiencies because of the nature of the finding, because, you know, a little bit of the dollar amount and the transaction flow as it occurred. So we had 5 areas, and we're going to talk about each one of those. The first area had to do with during our revenue confirmation procedures, PDC management found that it had not recorded revenues for the tax increment financing proceeds and the related expenditures totaling $13.5 million. Now, management did make this adjustment, and it should also be noted that there was actually no change to the net fund balance on that one. The next area has to do with the write-down of property held for sale. We identified 2 properties during our testing where the fair value had dropped below the historical cost, and found that PDC management had not made an adjustment for those properties. And there were various reasons behind that, but we would always encourage management to follow GAAP, and in those situations where it does fall below historical costs, for those adjustments to be made. The total on that is a total of $3 million for the 2 properties, and management made that adjustment to the financial statements. The third area had to do with liability recognition, and this was a real unique circumstance. During the financial close and reporting process, management identified that it was subject to and making monthly payments for a contractual provision in a property purchase and the related agreements. The total of that was $3.2 million, and management has recognized that in the current year, as it was immaterial to the prior year, not requiring a prior period adjustment. The fourth area had to do with accounts payable cutoff. We found 4 transactions that was not recorded in the correct period, and that totaled just a little less than $1 million. Management elected to pass on this adjustment due to it being immaterial individually, by fund, and in the aggregate, and we agree with that decision. The fifth area had to do with the net asset classification on the government-wide financial statements. We found 2 items that were classified incorrectly. The result was that unrestricted net assets were understated and restricted net assets were overstated by $5.6 million. So it's a classification within the net asset classification. That is immaterial to your government-wide statements. Management elected not to make that adjustment, and we agree with their decision. I just want to pause. Do you have any questions on those 5 areas before I continue? Okay, Jim, did you want to add anything to the? Okay. Also wanted to comment on the prior year status of the significant deficiency in internal controls that related to GASB 54. Excuse me. And there was we had a finding last year, a significant deficiency on the implementation and classification of fund balance as it related to assigned, and that we found that that was resolved in the current year. Regarding our report on the Oregon municipal standards, we found that there was non-compliance related to an excess of expenditures over appropriations in the Housing and Community Development Contract, the Home Grant, and the Enterprise Loan Fund. So we need to report that to you as well. Regarding our SAS 114, our required communications with you, we want you to know that we encountered no significant deficiencies during the course of the audit, which we greatly appreciate. We have some good discussions with management. We might banter some things back and forth, but there was nothing that we weren't able to come to a resolution that everyone agreed to.
And if I probably be important to point out, and Nancy did preface even our significant deficiency findings, but I think almost all of those were identified by management before we came out to do the audit. So even in those areas where we've identified some deficiencies in controls, your crew still identified and found these items and then reported them to us, and then we worked together to determine the proper accounting in getting those done. So even though, you know, you'd rather not have a significant deficiency finding, it's good to know that your crew identified these issues, so their processes did in fact identify them at some point before the audit was completed.
And then part of that as well, and I think maybe Faye and Catherine will speak to it when they come back up, but when that happens, then putting steps in place to make sure that doesn't happen again, correct?
Yes, and part of our, exactly, and part of our process, like Nancy just mentioned, a review of last year's finding. Part of our process when we come back next year will be to determine, did in fact management take the appropriate steps? But we know in working with Faye and Catherine and also with Patrick that there have been steps identified, and you're in various stages of, some of them have already been put in place, others you're working on. But we definitely will follow up in next year's audit and then report back to you the status of that.
And that's been the way that you've done it also prior years?
Yes.
When you've had the account for about 7 years or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thanks. We're also required to communicate to you corrected and uncorrected misstatements, and we covered that when we talked about the 5 significant deficiencies, the adjustments that management made and elected to pass on. So I'm not going to cover that again. Again, we had no disagreements with management. We're not aware of management going out and opinion shopping or searching for a better opinion, which, you know, it doesn't get any better than a clean opinion. So, and
okay.
Yeah.
I guess before we move on to the accounting standards, I think it also would be important to mention too, Faye mentioned to you that it seemed like the audit went pretty smooth from their perspective, and that's our experience too. This was probably the smoothest audit that we've conducted, and so it's nice to have that familiarity. I think it helps when we bring back the same staff, and I think over the years, you know, you've gotten used to our audit approach. Whatever the issue is, it was probably the smoothest audit we've conducted. So even though there were some findings, you know, that's common to have some elements or areas where improvements could be made. But in terms of the process and working through the audit, that went well. So we appreciate the efforts of your staff in facilitating the audit and so forth. In terms of the accounting standards, again, my intent isn't to turn you all into accountants or for you to come away with a real great technical understanding, but the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has been very busy the last several years, and they're still busy, they're still at it, and there are a number of pronouncements that have been issued. They're not effective yet, and one of them in particular will address or change how you report for your pension obligations. And right now, you know, you're participating along with the city in Oregon PERS. And as long as you make the annual contribution that Oregon PERS tells you to make, as their actuary determines, you have never reported a liability on your financial statements. Under this standard, if Oregon PERS becomes underfunded for any particular reason, either because of poor assumptions or demographics change, poor investment results, whatever, even if you've made all of your required annual payments, you'll get to record your share of that underfunding on the face of your financial statements. And it could be very significant. And I think the last I heard, Oregon PERS was underfunded somewhere between 15 and 20%. And so when you determine what your piece of that is, it's going to be a pretty big number. So it will increase your liabilities and reduce the net assets that you reflect in your financials. And that could have an impact as people look at the city and the Portland Development Commission. Perhaps it could have an impact on issuance of bonds, those sorts of things. So you want to kind of be on top of that or work with the city on that. I think the other reason to kind of look at it is, you know, you've got a number of urban renewal districts that are kind of winding down. And right now, you know, you probably haven't really been thinking about this underfunding as an obligation of any particular urban renewal district, but maybe we should think about that a little bit different. I don't know. So something to maybe think about going forward. So on this, it's not effective for a couple years yet. Oregon PERS has to implement 1 year before you do, and then you'll come the year that ends June 30, 15. So you've got a little bit of time to prepare for this. I think the city of Portland's already working on trying to get an estimate of what the impact will be on their financial statements, but I don't know if anyone, or if they've been talking with you about determining what your particular portion might be. Another standard that hasn't even been issued yet, but it's been deliberated for some time now, and it appears that GASB is going to continue to move forward, highly controversial, but this one will require some economic or some financial sustainability reporting. And what they're going to require is 5 years worth of forecasted future financial information to be included in your financial statements. It looks like it's going to go forward. I don't know if anything will derail it. It's highly controversial. Many organizations are lining up and testifying against this proposal. In your case, it might be pretty hard to project. You've got all these projects, the timing of which may be, you know, difficult to predict exactly. But if it does happen, you'll need to include 5 years worth of forecasted financial information in here. Cash receipts, cash disbursements, obligations, and certain other information. So anyway, we'll kind of keep you apprised. I'm sure your management staff is keeping apprised of the status of that.
Is that congressional action, or how does that get adopted?
Good question. It's really coming from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board itself. So there, as far as we can tell, there isn't pressure coming from any particular constituency group out there. I mean, sure, it'd be nice to know. I think that where they're coming from on this is that they believe that it's important for a reader of the financial statements to determine if your current activities are sustainable. Can you sustain the current level of spending going forward with the projected revenue streams that you have? And you know, and you can see a lot of benefits to that. The point is, can we tell today if we're heading down a path that's going to be problematic in the future? When they started on this project, they were thinking of maybe 20 years or 25 years out in reporting. Yeah. And they scaled back to 5 because of a lot of the feedback that they were getting on this standard. So you can kind of tell it comes from the right place. It is useful information. A lot of credit rating agencies develop it on their own to try to determine your credit rating. And so this would pull it into your financial statements. I think the controversial element of it is just the difficulty to predict what those cash flows are going to look like out into the future. So,
I actually I have a question about the first new standard, but I just want to state on the record, I actually think we actually do a fair amount of forecasting. I'm not sure I would say I welcome it, but I certainly think we're well prepared, and I think the board has seen the work that we've done, both in terms of our annual budget, which always includes a 5-year forecast, but in terms of some of the internal work we've done forecasting the expenditure side as well. And so I think that's a standard that we could meet. But on the first one, I mean, so in terms of Oregon PERS implementing it first, would they be the ones to determine the share that gets allocated to every government entity? And are there entities that aren't current on their payments? I mean, and is that could factor in?
That's an excellent question, and it's also a loaded question because it highlights one of the problems with the standards that exist. There are 2 standards that are out. One is for the pension plan itself, for Oregon PERS. So it's their standard that tells them how they implement this. Then there's another standard that tells all the local governments how they implement the standard. Those 2 standards do not dictate who calculates that proportion. And that's a problem with the standard. I've worked with the American Institute of CPAs, and we've identified this issue for the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and they elected not to address it in the standards. So somehow the marketplace between Oregon PERS, all the local governments, the different players, will have to determine how that proportion is and who does it. It would be nice if the actuary for Oregon PERS and Oregon PERS management would calculate everyone's proportion, and to do it in a way where you believe you can rely on it and all the auditors believe they can rely on it.
Yeah.
But since it's not in the standard and it's not provided, if you try to do it on your own, the question will be, how do you come up with it? Is it objective, and can we rely on it as an auditor? Is it objective enough information? So it's a problem that has to be addressed, and I can tell you that through the AICPA and a task force that I've been working on, we have provided a solution or a suggestion, but it's going to have to be voluntarily addressed now. But the suggestion is for the plan itself and its actuary to calculate the proportions and to be audited at the plan level so that you have objective information and your auditors can rely on that. I actually have a meeting with Oregon PERS next week. The purpose is to talk about the issues that have been, there are other issues too, but this is one big one, and determine if they would be willing to look at voluntary steps to help the PDCs and the cities and the counties and everyone else that participates in PERS. So we're not all doing it on our own. But
And maybe I should know this, but I'll ask it anyway. That is it the presumption that shortfalls in PERS ultimately flow back to the agencies that have the obligation? So that's okay. So that's
well, it is, and it's different for different states or different agreements, but this is where, and they really have a legitimate point. The issue is that if your agreement with PERS says that your contribution has to go back and pick up that underfunding over time, then really you are on the hook. So the only way you're not on the hook is if your agreement somehow is ironclad in terms of if it gets underfunded or whatever, some other entity has to make up for that. And that is the case in some states. For example, some states say we're going to cover the contributions for the school districts, or we're going to cover some portion of everyone's contribution. But in Oregon, as far as I know, that doesn't exist. In your formula that determines your current year contribution, a piece of that actually goes back and picks up a portion of that underfunding. So, yeah, ultimately, the local governments pick up that underfunding. They just do it over time.
Any other questions for Jim or Nancy? No, thank you. I agree. I think the consistency has been very helpful on an annual basis. I know if Charles was here and I mimic John, you can't say, it's like going to the doctor, right? I mean, it's not something you look forward to, but it's something that you recognize is necessarily in the long run, and appreciate the kind comments. Love a clean finding, obviously. That's wonderful, and appreciate the work that you do.
The last thing I would say on that too is that I appreciate the city's process of going out for an RFP, so you have a way of determining if you're really picking the right firm for your circumstances. But one of the things that for public companies, there is a provision that you have an audit committee and that there's an independent hiring of the firm, and there's a lot of questions about rotation of firms and whether that's good or bad. And there is differing results to that, but one thing that is consistent, the studies that have been performed, is that one of the things that came out of the Sarbanes-Oxley that really works is the audit committee. So I commend you for establishing an audit committee. I think that's an excellent thing to do, and clearly has been proven that that has added value to the audit process for publicly traded companies for sure, and I believe that exists in the government arena as well.
Yep. Thank you, and thanks for John and Charles, because you've served in that capacity for a number of years, which again, I think is very helpful. I mean,
Yeah, and I think our coordination, with you guys and with the city has worked out very well over the years. I mean, it just makes sense. I think our dollars are spent better. I think the city's dollars are spent better, and that's what we're responsible for trying to do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Faye, Catherine, are you Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So two things I'd like to add. The first is that in the list of accounting staff that I thanked, I forgot to thank Catherine. So, Catherine, this was Catherine's first year as accounting manager. She did a wonderful job managing the audit. So thank you, Catherine. And then also, in response to a point that John made, we have already started putting procedures in place, and I'm certain that the mistakes that were made this past year in the findings that were just shared with you will not happen, because we have put the appropriate internal controls in place to make sure that we catch those sort of errors should they occur in the future. So with that, we're done.
Any other questions for Faye and Catherine?
No, I also just wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Wilhoit and Commissioner Mullis, who are on the audit committee, as well as staff Catherine and Faye, because I noticed that the minute that anything comes up, how you take it to heart and you get right to work to make the corrections. And I think that's the most important learning lesson to any kind of deficiency within an organization, is that you're willing to make those corrections right away and you take them so seriously. And on top of it, you had a clean report. So really hard, conscientious staff on your part, and I think that's a really positive sign.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
So I would look for a motion
Can
to
I just
approve
add a
resolution
couple things
6990.
before?
Yeah,
Real quick?
you may.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Commissioner Wilhoit isn't here, but I mean, he makes his living in this stuff, so he obviously understands it and provides great value to the process. And I would just like to thank all the staff and everybody for all the hard work. And part of the reports that we get on a monthly basis is we track every single one of these items as they pop up. And then there's a progress report, you know, we're this far along on this one, we're this far along on this one, and this one's been completed. So it's a constant, ongoing process that doesn't end until it's done and resolved, so.
And I just want to add that given the audit process, this obviously takes place over a number of months, and so the findings, you know, when they happen, I actually, Faye brings them to me immediately. So I've known about these findings for probably 3 months now in different stages, because they're uncovered at different periods there in the audit period. And so we do take action immediately. So it's not like we've been waiting around until you guys approve the audit report. As soon as these things were recognized, we began to put in place procedures to correct it. So it is a real-time thing, and Faye, to her credit, is never shy about bringing these to my attention. You know, so she realizes that they're technically mistakes that come out of her shop, but she understands her fiduciary role and brings it to my attention immediately. So I really appreciate that as well. Thank you, Faye.
All right.
Now I will be thrilled.
Thrilled to move to approve Resolution 6990, accepting and approving comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2011 and 12 as required by Oregon Revised Statute 297.425, Portland City Charter, Chapter 15-104, and PDC Resolution number 6112.
And I would move to approve.
And I will second. And who says accounting isn't exciting?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting of the Portland Development Commission Audit Committee, and we are through for the day. Thank you very much.
All righty.